Welcome, creative adventurers. I'm so glad you're here today. I'm Debbie Cohn with D Cohn Designs, and it's week 4 of the Summer Scrappy Sizzler Quilt Along. Thank you for joining me. In today's video, I'm going to show you blocks 5, 6, and 7, the final blocks of our quilt along. Then stay tuned 2 weeks later for the final video. That will include the sashing, the finishing, the layout, and the reveal of both colorways. You may remember I'm doing a scrappy multicolor quilt, and I'm also doing a blue and white scrappy quilt. I can't wait to show you the final quilts. Please be sure to download this week's patterns before August 31st, 2022. They are free until then, and if you missed the other patterns in the quilt along, please go ahead and download those as well by August 31st. That way you'll have the complete pattern for free. After that, I'll be consolidating all the patterns into a single pattern, adding additional sizes, and then making it available for purchase on my website in the near future. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up and tell a friend, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. That's the best way to support my small business and my channel. In today's video, I want to give you a quick overview of the blocks we'll be going through today. Behind me, you'll see them on my makeshift design wall in the multicolor colorway. Here is block 5, here is block 6, and here is block 7. Before we start sewing, I just want you to know I'm not going to go through in detail how to construct the blocks. I'm going to have you go back to week number 3 video, which shows you in detail how to cut and how to trim up your half square triangles and how to stitch them together. I'm going to do a brief demo of one block here, and then I'll show you how to arrange each block in its final design. Last but not least, I'll show you the same blocks in the blue and white colorway as well. So let's get started. For this week's blocks, here are the tools that I'm using. You may want to refer back to last week's episode for other options to mark your triangles, to mark your half square triangles, and to trim your half square triangles. I'll be using the medium seam marker and a pencil to mark them, the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer to trim them, and my cutter, of course, to cut them with. All 3 of this week's blocks, the final blocks in our quilt along, are composed entirely of half square triangles. Again, just like last week, it's in how they are arranged. The first step is to mark the back of your 3.5 inch squares, the background squares. I'm laying my seam marker here. I'm drawing a quick pencil line on each side of the seam marker, and there I have my stitching lines right there. You could instead, if you'd like, take a ruler of any kind, draw a line from the diagonal point there to the diagonal point there, and that would be the cutting line. What you would do then is sew on 1/4 inch on each side of that center diagonal line. I prefer using the medium seam marker to draw my stitching lines. You of course could skip the marking altogether and use diagonal seam tape. That works too. Here you can see I've stitched on my diagonal lines. Now I'm going to cut that apart into 2 half square triangles. Here I'm just eyeballing. You could use a rotary cutter as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is trim them, because I'm using the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. If you're not using that and you're going to use a ruler and a mat or a square ruler, you'll want to press your half square triangles open first. But for me, I prefer this method. Here's what you do quickly. You line up, in this case, our finished half square triangle will be 2.5 inches. So I line up the dashed line on my seam line there. Then I cut. Make sure you've got a nice sharp blade. And then cut the dog ears off. We'll do the same for the other half square triangle. When pressing the half square triangles, I flip mine to the dark side. That makes it easier because I want my seam to go to the dark side. I set my seam. I pull up on the top part of it. Press it open gently. And there we are. We're ready to begin assembling the blocks. As you can see, this block has an X shape, so let's put it together. Here I've done a first run at the layout for the block number 5. I'm not happy with the color placement. I'm going to switch it up slightly and I'll come right back. I'm happy with this one. When putting it together, look for a V shape here pointing toward the center and a V shape here pointing toward the center. And then you have flying geese. You want the colored sections point to the center as well. So for assembly, it's just like we did in the previous week's videos. In this case, I found I'm more successful if I sew the middle sections together and then I add on each side as I go, like this. I'm less likely to turn the blocks. Let me sew it up and come back with the completed block. And here is an example of block 5 all sewn together. And here is block 5 in the blue and white colorway. I think it looks great. Here is block 6 in the multi-colorway. It's kind of a bullseye shape. You want to make sure the center has the 4 blocks touching, outside flankies here and here and here, and then your outside corners point toward the outside. Simple and easy. Let me show you the blue and white colorway. Here is the blue and white colorway. I have not trimmed the blocks to size yet. I will do that later. Again, the same thing, but it looks wonderful in blue and white as well. Let's go on to block 7, the final block in our quilt along. Here is block 7, the final block in our quilt along. If it looks familiar, that's because it's the inverse of our block number 1. In block number 1, these diamond shapes here were colored, but here in block 7, the diamonds are the background fabric. When you're putting this one together, be sure to look to see that you have diamond background fabric in these 4 areas and a colored diamond in the center. Let me show you the same block in the blue and white colorway. And here is block number 7 in the blue and white colorway. For these 3 blocks, again, you'll be making 3 of each one for a total of 9 blocks for this week's video. Let's do a very quick review of this week's blocks. This is block number 5, the sizzle block. This is block number 6, the broil block. Block number 7, the roast block. And that's it for week number 4 of the Scrappy Summer Sizzler Quilt Along. Please join me in 2 weeks when I'll have the final video, which will include the sashing, the layout, the finishing, and the big reveal for both colorways. Thank you for watching this week's video. Stay tuned in 2 weeks for the final video of our Summer Scrappy Sizzler Quilt Along. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you next time. Take care.